Let's get the proceedings proceeding this evening. No fallacies, I'm a king, no reaching. I got a better way to fight these demons. What do you know about my pain? The story surgeon is back with another response video. I write with a scalpel because my penmanship is surgical. This time, I'll be dissecting Chuckles P's video that basically puts down Yu Yu Hakusho to bring up Hunter x Hunter. First off, the genre is battle, not shonen. Second, he's already making a logical fallacy so early on. He used mouse scores to prove that Hunter x Hunter is better. This is a poor argument that is called the bandwagon fallacy. Just because the majority believes something to be true doesn't mean it is. As I always say, popularity doesn't equal quality. I have an entire video called Numbers and Rankings, where I even discuss Mal ranks. Let's go to the power system. Yu Yu Hakusho has a system that leans heavily on the individual type. I spoke about these in past videos, but it's basically where each character has their own powers with rules. Think of devil fruits, stands, and quirks. I do agree that defining a character's power with a number is a horrible idea, but there are ways to move around it. For example, what if power levels only described how much energy you have, and not necessarily how likely you were to win a fight? Look at Bleach's Espada. Yami was 0, the highest rank, solely because of his Reiatsu amount, yet he was taken out easily. Another possibility is that power levels are how much destruction you can create, but once again, they don't mean you can win every fight, because someone with brains could outsmart you. His description of why Toguro's fight is good sounds like mumbo jumbo to me. He says that it was good because their abilities reflect their true selves, therefore allowing physical altercation to reveal some aspect of their character without needing a word. Remember when Kakashi first introduced himself to Team 7 and Sakura said, "He said a lot, but all we really learned was his name"? That's what this is like. A lot of words, but little substance. A lot of analysts and video essayists do the same thing, and it gets on my nerves, but that's a tangent. Overall, I disagree. A power doesn't have to reflect the user, and a power doing so does not make the fight better. Look at World Trigger. Those are some of the best fights in anime and manga, and most of the characters are using the same abilities as each other. What makes a fight good is the creative use of powers, the strategies, and the changing tides of the battle. I have an analysis on this specific fight. Towards the end, he made a slight diss towards the dialogue during battle, which is a poor decision, because the dialogue during battle is what allows for the characters to have philosophical battles. Additionally, Yusuke's quips and witty remarks mid-battle show either that he's calm and in control, or that he's trying to cover up his nervousness, which is great writing that would be lost with complete silence. Silence can also serve as great writing though. For example, if the usually chatty Yusuke was silent throughout this fight, it could show that he was taking this very seriously. Writing is not just black and white, and so far it seems like Chuckles P views it that way, which limits his perspective and imagination. As for Nen, I have an entire video breaking down its pros and cons. One of the main things I'll point out in reply is that for all of the intricacies that Nen has, the actual signature abilities pale in comparison to Yu Yu Hakusho's creativity with spirit and demon energy. I mentioned this in my Nen video. There are more creative abilities in Yu Yu than in Hunter. The Dark Tournament, you have Chu's Demon Alchemy, Rinku's Serpent Yo-Yos, Gama's Paralyzing Paint, Zeru's Pyrokinesis, Jin's Aerokinesis, Toya's Cryokinesis, Makintaro's Shapeshifting, Kuromomotaro's Adaptation, and Karasu's Bombs. Then in the chapter Black Saga, you have the Shadow ability, the Mimic ability, the Taboo ability, Doctor's Scalpel, Game Room's Room, Sniper's Homing Power, and Gourmet's Absorption. Nen's Hatsu are not rivaling this amount of creativity. The best abilities Nen has to offer are Killua's, Kurapika's, and Hisoka's. Moving on, he says, the potential for fights to be reduced to a slugfest is nearly zero, yet Gon vs Bito is exactly that, and Netero vs Meruem was basically that. Which brings up another point I made in my Chimera and Arc analysis. The Royal Guards and Meruem basically had power levels. They were physically superior to all of the humans, and most of the humans had no way of getting around that. Meruem and Pito were so broken that they had to be killed by Deus Ex Machinas, which is something he'll bring up later, so I'll continue that there. Furthermore, how many Yu Yu fights are reduced to slugfests? Yusuke vs Chu was only at the end of the fight, and this was an intentional choice by both characters because they were out of energy. The only other one I recall is Yusuke vs Sensui after Yusuke was revived. Even after power levels were introduced, Yusuke vs Yomi still managed to include strategy in the anime. He says, fights in Hunter x Hunter are automatically more entertaining. This is not true. There are several Yu Yu fights that are better than Hunter fights. This goes back to the black and white view. Next, he talks about death. I agree that reversing deaths can lose impact, but once again, he has a very black and white, all or nothing view. He says all tensions of the fight was gone and replaced with a nagging desire to get on with it in reaction to Yusuke's revival against Sensui. He's entitled to feel this way, but I feel like he's the type of person to say, if I know how the story ends, there's no point in watching it. Just because you know a character is not going to die doesn't mean that there's no tension. The tension is in the how, not the what. We know what will happen, but how will it happen? The how is as important or more important than the what. It's the journey, not the destination. You're lying if you're telling me that you didn't expect Gon to survive all of his fights, or if you expected him to actually die after the Chimera Ant arc. You knew Killua was going to find a way to save him, but the engaging part was the journey to get there. Except that journey wasn't engaging in this case. He says, it's hard to weave intrigue into a fight you know your self-insert will walk away from almost entirely unscathed in regards to the Three Kings saga. First off, Yusuke is not a self-insert. Not all protagonists are self-inserts. Second, this goes back to what I just said. You're telling me you didn't know Gon was going to pass the exam? You didn't know that Gon would get Killua back? You didn't know that Gon would beat Greed Island or stop the bomber? You didn't know that the Chimeras would die? You didn't know that Killua would succeed in reviving Gon? You didn't know that Gon would eventually meet his dad? Come on now. I do want to make it clear that I am not impressed by the concept of constantly reversing deaths. It does lose its impact when done so many times, but it doesn't kill the tension. Additionally, when Genkai died of natural causes in the Three Kings saga, I can definitely say that it was impactful despite not being in a battle. It really grounded the story and showed that these were still humans. Next, he says, Hunter x Hunter chooses to blur any formal lines of good or bad, which is in contrast to Yu Yu. This is actually ironic because at face value, he'd be objectively wrong. Yu Yu has the Chapter Black saga, which is all about moral greatness. It makes you question if Koenma is good and if Sensui is actually bad. It shows that humans can be as evil as demons. This blurs the line between good and evil because we initially assumed that humans were good and demons were evil. Meanwhile, Hunter has clearly evil characters like Hisoka, which he mentions, and Chrollo. They aren't doing their actions for the greater good, but I'll give him a break and clarify that what he meant to say is that the line between foe and ally is blurred. He mentions how Hisoka can be an ally in one arc and a foe in the next, but simply working with the heroes doesn't make him a good guy. He then says a few more sentences that don't really say much. He says, death is the possible outcome for a risky action, as if that's a unique trait to Hunter x Hunter. Yu Yu has death too, it just reverses it a lot. Then he says that the heroes often have to make a deal with the devil without giving any examples. The only examples I can think of are vows like Kurapika's and Gon's. That's 2 examples, which is not often. Then Chuckles makes an excuse to justify Kite's rebirth. His quote is very verbose, but basically, he says that chimeras were set up to allow reincarnation because that's how they reproduce, and because this wasn't replicated afterwards. But by that same logic, I can say that the spirit world justifies revival due to its existence and Koenma being allowed to manipulate the rules from the first episode. The rules of the spirit world are much more vague, but the concept that allows for revival is still there. Additionally, Kite's rebirth tactic was used several times before Kite used it, so the rarity argument doesn't apply. Then he adds that the amount of time in between the death and revival makes the death feel more permanent. I see where he's coming from, but I disagree. I think the reactions to the death are much more important than the amount of chapters that the character stays dead. Once the emotional reaction is had, reversing the death does not reverse the impact that was made on the characters that witnessed the death. Yusuke and Kuwabara both unlocked powers when witnessing the other's death, and in that moment, it emotionally traumatized them. That trauma doesn't suddenly lose value because the character comes back, and those powers definitely stay. He goes on to summarize his points, but I've made my counterpoints clear. Yusuke's demon heritage is a Deus Ex Machina, but the fight against Kazemaru was not. In case you all didn't know, a major narrative chain in the first saga of Yu Yu was Yusuke gaining victory through being lucky rather than through his skill. This was an intentional choice. This can be seen in his fight against Hiei, most of the tournament fights, and the Suzaku fight. Yusuke falling may have been an accident, but the situation is plausible. If you don't like this choice, that's fine, but it's not a Deus Ex Machina. Tripping while running doesn't shatter logic and reasoning. Yusuke having algae in his ear is more of a stretch of plausibility, but it's still within the realms. After all, the setup was him falling into the pond, the execution was the algae in the ears. The whole incantation reversal is my personal issue, because this was never established as a thing until it already happened. Quote, using it incessantly eliminates the appeal of your story. End quote. Again, not necessarily. I think it's a bad move in general, but it is also asinine to say that the entire story is now ruined because of it. It depends on the scale of the Machina and what it means for the story. Let's talk about Hunter. The Chimera Ant arc, everyone's favorite arc, has 2 Deus Ex Machinas that are even more poorly written and more negatively impactful than any of the ones in Yu Yu. But with how Chuckles has been talking about Hunter, I don't expect him to notice that. Let's start with the first one. When Netero is fighting Meruem, an opponent he can't beat because his power level is too high, he pulls out an atomic bomb. That's right, and a storyboard conflict is solved with battles, and then a character brings out a miniature atomic bomb in their heart that blows up when they die. This sounds almost comical, but wait, there's more. The bomb didn't kill Meruem because his power level was just too high. But guess what? The bomb had a poison that would kill anything it hits, no exceptions. That's right, the character whose power level was too high needed to be killed by a cheat code that kills everything. How about Deus Ex Machina number 2, Gon vs Pito? Gon has been established to have a far less power level than Pito, meaning that no amount of strategy was going to get him to beat her. So you know what he does? He makes a vow that essentially makes his power level far superior to hers and beats the snot out of her. I talk about both of these in detail in my Chimera Ant video, but what's important is that both of these Deus Ex Machinas are used to conclude fights with large amount of tension and weight in the story, and both of the Machinas are laughably bad. But I seem to be the only one who's aware of this, which is something I'll bring up at the end. Now, what does Chucklespie have to say about Machinas in Hunter x Hunter? He talks about Gon and Killua running away against Pito. That's fair, but then he compliments Gon's final fight against Pito. I've said my piece on that. Then, in the Three Kings saga, he undermined the impact of the heroes losing because they won in some other way. Gon literally won his battle against Pito, but that's not a problem. Finally, he says Yu Yu ended with a whimper, which once again I disagree with. The anime ended at a perfect spot. Meanwhile, Hunter x Hunter might never end. In conclusion, Mal scores don't mean shit when it comes to quality. Nen is not a superior power system simply because it is expansive rather than individual, as Yu Yu often produces better abilities. Revival doesn't eliminate tension because the journey is more important than the destination. Reactions to a death are more important than the time a character stays dead. And Deus Ex Machinas simply don't eliminate a story's quality just by existing. It's crazy how many videos of mine I can reference to counter these points. That just shows how much ground I've covered on my channel. But I have one more reference, Hunter x Hunter and false praise. Chuckle P's video is the essence of what I was criticizing in that video. There are fans that put Hunter x Hunter on a pedestal and are thus blinded from any kind of flaws. As you can see in my response, many of the things Chuckles dissed Yu Yu for doing were done by Hunter x Hunter, and many of the things he praised Hunter x Hunter for doing were done by Yu Yu. His grading system is inconsistent, it's full of double standards. And then there are times where my boy reaches across the lunch table to compliment Hunter x Hunter and diss Yu Yu. He'll create rules to favor Hunter. It's like his mindset is, how can I make Hunter sound superior to Yu Yu? These are the types of videos that would have tricked me back in my green years. And it saddens me because this guy sounds like he could actually make a competent analysis video. But here, he's just so off the mark. And he's not the only one like this. The anime fandom is full of synonyms. By that, I mean people that regurgitate the same arguments they heard from someone else. You all say the same shit. Finally, Yu Yu does many things better than Hunter. Just to name a few: philosophical battles, creative abilities, character designs, character chemistry, character charisma, comedy, plot focus, and plot pacing. Hunter x Hunter did not succeed because of Yu Yu Hakusho's failures. In fact, Hunter x Hunter fails in places where Yu Yu Hakusho succeeds. This is the second response defending Yu Yu. Y'all gotta put respect on Yu Yu's name. Yumesuke out. Thank you for watching. Please like, comment, share, subscribe, and help me revolutionize the manga industry by buying my manga and spreading the word. All important links will be in the description.